Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
We have more details as to what caused the death of longtime Miracle Channel CEO, Pastor Leon Fontaine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took this stand during the final day of the public inquiry into the government's use of the Emergencies Act. And a huge fundraiser wrapped up for the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation, which saw a number of Christmas trees sold for a great cause.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. We begin tonight with more information on the passing of our CEO, Pastor Leon Fontaine, who died Saturday in Calgary at the tender age of 59. The Fontaine family has released a statement which in part says that Leon was unexpectedly diagnosed with aggressive late-stage cancer. While pursuing treatment, his health suddenly turned for the worse. His death has left his family shocked and at a loss for words. There's a deep void in the hearts and minds of all of those who knew him. Leon and his wife Sally have 5 children and 9 grandchildren. The Fontaines became senior pastors at Springs Church back in 1994. Leon was also president of Springs Christian Academy and became the CEO of Miracle Channel back in 2010. As a world-renowned speaker and author, Leon spoke at both Christian and mainstream conferences around the world. His devotionals have been translated into 12 languages, and his books have had a major global impact. And by the way, today would have been Pastor Leon's 60th birthday. Happy heavenly birthday, Leon. He will be sorely missed by all of us here at Miracle Channel. A Manitoba Conservative senator spoke about the passing of Pastor Leon Fontaine at the Senate in Ottawa. Donald Plett spoke about how much Leon meant to so many and how he lived his faith.
His faith was not just a Sunday faith. It translated into everything he did. He was compelled to do what he could to make the world a better place by impacting one person's life at a time.
The Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation held their 28th annual Christmas Tree Festival. The 3-day fundraiser brought in around $170,000 for the foundation. Now, to discuss this in more detail is the executive director of the foundation, Alan Barsalik, who joins us now from Lethbridge. Alan, how many trees went out the door this year?
We had 19 trees this year, a total of 25 live auction items. And we had trees go as high as $5,000–6,000, and it was very exciting. It was busy. It was hectic with the room and then the bids kind of going up in there, and then the rebid, and it was very, very exciting. Bob and his crew did a fantastic job with Baylog Auctions on putting together a wonderful event.
Now, you raised about $170,000 for the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation. What will the money be going towards?
The money goes towards the greatest needs of the hospital, special projects, programs, and certainly state-of-the-art equipment. And as we want to train and retain new and exciting talent here towards southern Alberta. So we're very excited about the amount and where the money will be going towards.
Great. Thanks so much, Alan. That was Alan Bartalsik, Executive Director of the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation, joining us from Lethbridge. You know, the crushing blow of losing a loved one to an impaired driver can be absolutely devastating. MAD's Project Red Ribbon campaign encourages sober driving during the Christmas holidays. Video journalist Micah Quinn was in Coaldale earlier today to hear about the stories and stats regarding impaired driving and how it severely impacts our communities.
It's heartbreaking because it's 100% preventable.
Members of the Lethbridge Police Service, RCMP, Coaldale and District Emergency Services, and officials from the town of Coaldale and Mothers Against Drunk Driving Lethbridge and Area Branch were on hand to unveil the 35th annual Project Red Ribbon campaign. Anita Huchala, the president of the MAD Lethbridge chapter, explained what the campaign is all about.
The idea behind the project is to bring awareness to impaired driving right across Canada by asking the individuals to tie a red ribbon onto their vehicle, backpack, or their briefcase to show their support and their commitment to not drive impaired, as well as in honor of the victims that we have lost to impaired driving.
This year's campaign is focused on Thomas Ratt, who was struck and killed by an impaired driver after he stepped off a bus in 2018. In 2021, Lethbridge Police charged 272 impaired drivers, and in 2022, 180 motorists have been charged. So far this year, LPS have seen 37 collisions where drugs or alcohol have been a factor. Sergeant Daniel Lumnus, with the Traffic Response Unit of the LPS, says it's a good idea to plan ahead if you're going out for a night on the town.
Think about Uber or a taxi, or talk to a friend, a family member. Operation Red Nose, especially for this holiday season, will be operating.
Coaldale Mayor Jack Van Ryan says Project Red Ribbon is vital in spreading awareness of the dangers of impaired driving, especially during the holiday season.
And it's important that we send a unified message out that everybody is involved with this and everybody has the same concerns, that if you're going to go out and enjoy the holiday season this year, then make sure that you have an organized ride home.
Stats from Mad Canada indicate that every hour in our country, an average of 10 federal criminal charges and provincial short-term license suspensions are laid for alcohol or drug-impaired driving. The Project Red Ribbon campaign runs until January 2nd of 2023. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The 7th annual Winter Light Festival begins next week here in Lethbridge. The annual event will be taking place at the Nikiyuko Japanese Garden and features thousands of colorful lights for families to enjoy this Christmas season. Marketing manager Eric Ranson says they've had some new additions this year.
We get new sculptures made from Calgary, and those will be ready to go for opening night. And on top of that as well, we have introduced a new dome experience for our guests to enjoy. So the dome experience that we have 2 different events going on. The Sakura display, which translates to cherry blossoms, as well as Northern Lights display, which is what we know very well here in Canada. So each one of them, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday are our Northern Lights exhibits, and Thursday and Saturday are our Sakura.
Always a fun time. The festival will open on November the 30th, and tickets can be bought at the Nikiyuko Japanese Garden. Well, it's not really looking like Christmas here in the city right now. Most of the snow in Lethbridge is gone, thanks to those warm Chinook winds. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we shouldn't get too comfortable since more snow and colder temperatures are on the way?
Yeah, well, you know, Hal, this afternoon, Lethbridge was actually the warm spot in Alberta at 12 degrees, and that's mainly thanks to those Chinook winds. Winds were gusting quite a bit. They're going to stay gusting this evening at 80 kilometers per hour. Into tomorrow, Saturday, we're looking at a high of 5 degrees with lots of sunshine. Hopefully next week, Lethbridge won't be the cold spot in Alberta, because after Saturday, it seems like there's going to be a lot of flurries heading our way, and we're going to be heading back into the deep freeze. I'll be back later in the show to let you know all those details.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took the stand today for the last day of testimonies of the public inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act. Trudeau says that declaring the act in and of itself does not do anything, but it enables governments to bring in special temporary measures to deal with the situation. The Prime Minister also told the inquiry that when thousands from the Freedom Convoy arrived, many in heavy trucks, in late January, he saw that local police appeared to be caught by surprise and didn't have much of a plan to deal with the situation.
And even, I mean, we heard in testimony here that there was a plan on the 13th that the Ottawa Police Services pulled together. I would recommend people take a look at that actual plan, which wasn't a plan at all. It was a talk about using liaison officers to try and shrink the perimeter a little bit. But as you look at the annex for how the troops are deployed, how the police officers are deployed, what resources are going to be need, every annex is to be determined later, to be determined later. It was not even in the most generous of characterizations.
Veteran political reporter Ray Fillion has been covering the public inquiry in Ottawa for the past few weeks. He joins us now from our nation's capital. Ray, what are your thoughts on the testimony of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today?
Essentially, Prime Minister Trudeau has explained the main reasons why he has decided to invoke the Emergencies Act last winter. Essentially, he says it was because the government, according to Mr. Trudeau, feared that there would be a next escalation of violence. He said that there were weapons in Coutts, Alberta, where there was a blockade at the border. He said there were kids on the streets of Ottawa. He said that the federal government and himself feared that some of the protesters might use those children as human shields. He also said that the government was concerned that some of the vehicles that were parked in downtown Ottawa and elsewhere along the Canada-U.S. border might be used perhaps as weapons. So he said that reluctantly, for all those reasons, essentially for security reasons, the federal government decided to invoke the Emergencies Act. He says it's a decision that wasn't made lightly. He says he could carefully consider that some other options, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do, according to his testimony.
Now, Commissioner Rouleau has a lot of information to go through with more than 65 testimonies. When will he release his report, and what will become of it?
Well, the report's going to be released in mid-February. Justice Rouleau has until then to produce his report. That's what the law says, black on white. It's very clear. He has that obligation. What will become of it? Essentially, we expect political consequences for the Prime Minister should Justice Rouleau determine that the Prime Minister was wrong in deciding to invoke the Emergencies Act. There won't be any penalties, any sanctions on the Prime Minister, any legal sanctions, but he's going to be in trouble politically. Although a majority of Canadians, we have to say, according to some polling that was done last February and again over the last couple of weeks, an overwhelming majority of Canadians, something like 65 or 70%, think that he made the right decision last winter in invoking the Emergencies Act.
Wow. Thanks so much, Ray. That was veteran political reporter Ray Fillion joining us from Ottawa. Federal Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos announced that Canada has ordered additional units of children's pain medication in response to the continuing shortage across the country. A lot of the meds are being produced right here in Canada.
Thanks to close collaboration with our industry partners, a record number of children's analgesics are currently being manufactured across the country, with some companies producing twice as many units as they did at the same time in 2021. As an example of this increased production, during the month of November only, a total of 1.1 million units of children's Advil products from Alon will have been made available for the Canadian market. This is a significant amount versus a typical November. This is exactly the type of news that Canadians want to hear, that this children's pain medication is being domestically produced for Canadians.
The Alberta government is forging ahead with plans to twin a major section of highway here in southern Alberta. Shovels will soon be in the ground to twin a section of Highway 3 between Taber and Burdett, and it will take place through a phased-in approach. Angela Stewart has more now on what this means for Taber and southwestern Alberta.
It's the major east-west corridor linking both Saskatchewan and British Columbia to Alberta, and now a section of Highway 3 will be getting a major upgrade.
I can tell you that the surest way to insulate Alberta from any shocks is to keep on investing in infrastructure and to find new ways to support growth and development.
An 8-phased approach will see twinning done on all the remaining portions of Highway 3, running from Medicine Hat to the BC border, with the first phase starting on a section between Taber and Burdett.
The other 7 phases, their functional and planning studies are nearing complete. So we'll be able to see construction along all of Highway 3 to twin this 215-kilometer stretch of road, and which is such an important road for southern Alberta.
Funding for this project was first announced in July of 2020, and the Alberta government believes twinning this section will bring products to market more efficiently.
We've seen a lot of growth, obviously, in southern Alberta, and especially in the agriculture sector. To be able to see more sugar beet processing, more feedlots in the area, just more economic activity in general. So it's something that it's stressing Highway 3 in a good way.
According to the province, around 4,000 to 5,000 vehicles travel on this section of highway each day. Mayor Andrew Prokop for the town of Taber says this project is long overdue.
This stage, what's actually approved to the Taber to Burdett is absolutely required and probably 20 years overdue.
Well, the stretch of road the twinning will take place runs about 46 kilometers, and Prokop says this will also provide a huge economic boost to the town and surrounding areas.
All things considered, it's the twinning aspect makes a huge difference for the access to the agri-food corridor on what that's going to do for effective efficiency, and that's a huge bonus in itself. For every $1 invested, $3 come back in that type of project, so that's a huge economic boost for the economy and Taber area.
The Highway 3 twinning project will create hundreds of jobs locally, with construction to begin in spring of 2023. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Following Thursday's ostrich roundup in Tabor, the town has donated 20 turkeys to its local food bank just in time for the Christmas holiday season. The town supports the food bank many times throughout the year, and Mayor Andrew Prokop says it felt like an appropriate time to make the donation.
There's a huge need, especially around Christmas time, for the hampers, so the turkeys go hand in hand with that for that purpose. And I think she said last year they roughly doled out 170 hampers, and they're expecting to go over 200 this year. So with that and all those things considered, again, we thought it was very appropriate to donate the 20 turkeys.
We're very thankful on behalf of the food bank to receive these turkeys. It is unfortunate what happened yesterday, but we graciously accept these turkeys. This is going to help a lot during Christmas as we're in preparation for our Christmas hamper program. So we can't thank you guys enough for this. This is a huge donation for us. So,
distribution of the food bank Christmas hampers will begin on December the 20th. Alberta farmers will be receiving some much-needed financial help to recruit, hire, and retain workers in the agriculture and agri-food industry. The province, along with the federal government, announced a $2.5 million partnership for Ag for Life that delivers education to around 500,000 Albertans in the agriculture sector. The funding will provide groups with grants of up to $40,000 to increase public awareness of agricultural career opportunities through online advertising campaigns. Ag for Life will also offer grants of up to $25,000 to provide human resources training to support worker retention. A new project from the University of Calgary's Taylor Family Digital Library is creating 3D digital records of some Alberta residential schools. In working with Indigenous communities, the library has created accurate virtual and physical models of 3 former residential schools here in the province.
Well, the way we've scanned the school is as it is right now, but we have actually done some computer reconstruction work. So we've basically used computer gaming technology to reconstruct what certain rooms like the chapel and the dormitory would have looked like when the school was in use. So that's been basically done using a combination of historic photos, but also backing and forthing with some of the survivors. So we would do a computer reconstruction. We would show it to the advisory committee, and they would say, oh, the pews were a little bit higher, or he didn't quite get the floor color right, and so on, because of course the historic photos are black and white. And by moving back and forth, we managed to get an acceptable computer reconstruction of a space like a dormitory.
Officials say they may be expanding this new technology to Australia, involving Australian mission schools, which were very similar to Canada's residential schools. Well, this is Black Friday, a day when many shoppers officially kick off their Christmas shopping season, and retailers offer a high number of discounts. High inflation has left many shoppers counting their money far more than usual this year. The annual spending bonanza looks somewhat different this year, as experts say while there are more deals than usual, they are coming against a backdrop of consumers who are more cost-conscious than ever. During the pandemic, retailers were struggling with supply chain issues, which led to empty shelves. But now experts say the pendulum has swung the other way, with many retailers having an overabundance of supply. There are apparently a number of red flags to watch out for to help prevent a breakdown in a relationship. That's according to former pastor Schaefer Parker, who is with Faith Beyond Belief. Parker says a big problem in North America today is that people put way too much focus on themselves instead of others.
There is a kind of radical personal individualism that's being emphasized. Think of, you have to satisfy yourself. Before everybody else, you have to satisfy yourself. Make sure that you're living your best life. And that means that if your family is in the way of you living your best life, walk away. If your children are in the way of you living your best life, then again, walk away, because the only thing that matters is the individual and the satisfaction that you are personally getting out of life. When you have that kind of message drummed into your head through every movie that comes out, through any number of television programs, through all the media, TikTok and whatever else is out there, when you have that message drummed in and people begin to follow it, society will inevitably begin to break down.
Mr. Parker will also discuss how the Bible can help with so many relationship problems. He'll have details coming up in the second half of our program. Well, it was nice to be well above seasonal for this time of year temperature-wise, but unfortunately, the cooler temperatures and more of the white stuff is on the way. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. You know, the average temperature for this time of year is about 2 degrees for Lethbridge. We were well above that today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, the very warm temps may be leaving us soon with the good potential of more snow on the way?
Yeah, that's right. Lots of snow is on the way, Hal. As much as 60% come Sunday, and then that should stay for most of next week. As we look into tomorrow, Saturday, we're still looking a little Chinooky, 5 degrees the high on Saturday with mainly clear skies. Then the snow begins on Sunday. Not bad temperature, though, at all. We're looking at 5 degrees the high. And then we're like plunging down to -9 for Monday, -12 on Tuesday, all the way down to -16 on Wednesday and Thursday. I think that might be the coldest that we've seen so far this year. As we look to the almanac, that tells us that the average high for this time of year is 2 degrees. Average low is -9. We're going to be way colder than that next week. 16 was our high temperature on this day back in 1939. And in 1985, we had the chilliest, which was -28 degrees. Sun rose this morning just before 8 o'clock at 7:58 a.m. And this afternoon, sun will be setting at 4:39 p.m. So we were already underneath 8.5 hours of daylight only. As we look to the west coast for the highs tomorrow, we're seeing a high of Victoria with periods of rain tomorrow. Chance of showers as well in Vancouver tomorrow with a high of 8 degrees. -3 the high in Edmonton for Saturday. And all the way up to 11 degrees in Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud. Calgary also expecting those Chinook winds could get up to 80 kilometer per hour wind gusts as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon sitting at 2 degrees tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. Clearing in Regina tomorrow with 4 degrees the high. -3 the high in Winnipeg tomorrow. Going to feel it a little bit with the wind chill, a little bit chillier there. As we look to central Canada, a little bit of a different story over here. Toronto sitting at 6 degrees with partly cloudy skies. Clearing in Ottawa tomorrow, 5 degrees the high there and a high of 4 degrees in Montreal. Montreal looking at some light rain in the morning and some periods of afternoon showers as well. As we look to Atlantic Canada, 1 degree the high in Fredericton with showers, 3 degrees the high in Halifax, high of 0 in Charlottetown, and 1 degree the high in St. John's with some showers expected there. There you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
The federal government posted a surplus of $1.7 billion during the first 6 months of the current fiscal year. Now, that's a big turnaround from the $68.6 billion deficit reported for the same period last year. The latest information says government revenues were up $32.8 billion, which translates to an increase of 18.6%. Program expenses dropped by $40.3 billion, or 17.9%. That was largely due to the expiration of COVID-19 support measures. But higher interest rates and inflation have driven up the cost of public debt charges by 47.8%, or $5.6 billion, compared with the same period last year. Retail analysts say the rising cost of living will intensify the hunt for deals today, which is Black Friday. They say sales should be strong even though retailers have stretched deals over several weeks and even offered similar discounts online. Experts say stores that offer blowout deals of up to 70% off will be fairly busy, while retailers with more tepid discounts at 25 to 30% off won't see the same traffic online or in stores. Elon Musk says Twitter plans to relaunch a revamped premium service next week that will offer different colored check marks to accounts. Musk originally offered a blue check mark to anyone who paid $8 a month, but scrapped the idea due to a flood of imposter accounts. Musk says the new version will give companies a gold check, governments a gray check, and those who are established will pay the service for the blue check mark. The latest change comes a day after Musk said he would grant amnesty for suspended accounts following an online poll on the move that he says garnered 72% support. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 39 points on the day to finish at 20,383. The Dow was up 152 points to 34,347. The S&P 500 was down 1 on the day to 4,026. And the Nasdaq was down 58 points to 11,226. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.66 to $76.28 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 28 cents to $7.02 US. Gold was down 31 cents to $17.54.93 US an ounce. And silver was up 22 cents to $21.75 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.63 per bushel, barley's at $9.80, canola's at $18.48, and corn is at $11.63 per bushel. Live cattle were down 28 cents to $153.08. Feeder cattle January contract was down 95 cents to $178.30, and lean hogs were down 18 cents to $83.78. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.74 US. Recapping one of our top stories, we have more information we can share now regarding the passing of Miracle Channel CEO Leon Fontaine. In a released statement, the Fontaine family says Pastor Leon died from cancer on Saturday in Calgary. Pastor Leon was not only one of the senior pastors of Springs Church, but he has also been our CEO of Miracle Channel since 2010. Leon and Sally Fontaine leave behind 5 children and 9 grandchildren. And by the way, today would have been Leon's 60th birthday. He will be sorely missed by so many people. What does the Bible say about dealing with grief with the loss of a loved one? How can God really be there to comfort us? Former Pastor Schaefer Parker with Faith Beyond Belief has some thoughts he'll share with us in just a moment. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Come out and support the 26th annual Canadian Tire Teddy and Toque Toss at the NMAX Centre taking place Friday, December 9th. Enjoy an energetic hockey game between rivals the Lethbridge Hurricanes and the Medicine Hat Tigers. And on the first Hurricanes goal, throw a stuffed Teddy or Toque, which will be collected and given out to kids in need. Fans can visit both Canadian Tire locations in Lethbridge, and with a $15 Toque or Teddy Bear purchase, receive a free ticket to the game. Tickets can also be purchased at the NMAX Centre or online at lethbridgehurricanes.com. The Interfaith Food Bank is looking for volunteers to help in administration, the warehouse, and kitchen. The commitment is 3 to 4 hours once or twice a week. Through your help, you'll be providing food security in our community and enjoy a sense of purpose by serving others. For details on volunteering, contact Bill at volunteer@interfaithfoodbank.ca or by calling 403-320-8779. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
Many people would say that the family unit has always been the bedrock of society, and as the generations age and mature, attitudes ebb and flow. Now, there's still the constant of family and relationships, and we wanted to chat with a former pastor who can speak on the topic. Schaefer Parker is with Faith Beyond Belief, and he joins us now from Calgary. Welcome back to Bridge City News, Schaefer.
Hi, Hal. Thank you for having me.
Now, we wanted to highlight several practical spiritual steps that can really help with circumstances families are dealing with today. Now, family and relationships can be a deep and maybe even a sensitive topic for some people, but let me ask you, what benefits does the family unit really bring to a community?
Well, the more united a family is in commitment to all the things that make life worth living, relationships that are based upon, well, actual commitment between father and mother, or first husband and wife, but as children come, they become fathers and mothers. And so real commitment between father and mother. Just yesterday, I was thinking about my own dad who died in 2016. We're dealing still with some estate issues, and it was making me think about him. And he was not very well educated, and he always had a laborer kind of job. And no one would have ever thought of him as a genius. But every time I thought about him, and what I was thinking about yesterday is, you could count on him. He would be there. He would be there for you. He'd be there to love my mother. He would be there to love me, to love my brother and sisters. He would be there to use the family to benefit the community in various kinds of ministries and services that we would do involving the community. And so when you have families like that, you practically don't even need a government, because the people will govern themselves as they are governed by the principles of God's word and enabled to follow those principles by the indwelling presence of God's Holy Spirit, which you only have, of course, through faith in Jesus Christ.
You know, it's amazing, right, how oftentimes parents show their love through their actions and not so much through words, which is pretty powerful.
Well, my dad had some words. He never failed to say, "I love you." I hear some people say, I never heard my dad say that. I can say I heard him say that. I heard him say it to my mother. I heard him say it to me pretty much every day of my life. while I was growing up.
Or my father's words were, if you fall out of that tree and break your leg, don't come running to me. That was his famous expression there. Schaefer, can you share with us some of the red flags you've seen as a pastor that can maybe lead to a breakdown of the family unit?
Well, of course, one of the things is to embrace, there's a kind of a strange thing going on in our world right now. There's a lot of tribalism, and it's very important that you identify with some group. But at the same time, there is a kind of radical personal individualism that's being emphasized. Think of, you have to satisfy yourself. Before everybody else, you have to satisfy yourself. Make sure that you're living your best life. And that means that if your family is in the way of you living your best life, walk away. If your children are in the way of you living your best life, then again, walk away, because the only thing that matters is the individual and the satisfaction that you are personally getting out of life. When you have that kind of message drummed into your head through every movie that comes out, through any number of television programs, through all the media, TikTok and whatever else is out there, when you have that message drummed in and people begin to follow it, society will inevitably begin to break down.
So in your mind, what role is the church playing to really help these struggling families keep it all together?
Well, strangely enough, the church is working hard. Let's be very clear. You could not find an evangelical church that does not want their families to be strong, that doesn't encourage their families to be strong. But sometimes we import worldly attitudes into our ministry styles, and that gives us a real problem. For example, we'll have a youth ministry, and it's almost exclusively done apart from parents. One of the weird things about the comparison between Scripture and youth ministry in many churches, it seems to me, is that on the Judgment Day, the youth pastor of whatever church your family attended is not going to be the first one questioned about the spiritual growth and well-being of your children. On Judgment Day, parents are going to have to give an answer for their input into their children's lives. But churches tend to have an active youth ministry, so there's lots of activities, even good ministries and Bible studies and all those things, always apart from the parents. And you actually sometimes, you get tired of the fact that parents are encouraged to drop their kids off and pick them up later. And it would seem to me that one of the things churches could do differently would be to encourage parents to know how to minister to their children and then fulfill their God-given role as the father, the spiritual head of the house, the mother who also works with the dad to be spiritual priests in that home.
Now, helping to nurture that relationship, of course, is God's Holy Scriptures, the Bible. Many people have heard that the Bible could actually mean basic instructions before leaving Earth. Schaefer, can you give us an example of how the truths of the Bible have helped families throughout some tough times, like we're experiencing right now?
Well, as long as we're talking about basic instructions before leaving Earth when your life comes to an end, I think sometimes that expression is used in a way that I think is an unbiblical emphasis on the end of the world itself. And I think we sometimes we put such an emphasis on the end of the world that people kind of give up in despair. What's the use? Because the world's about to end anyway. And that's not what the Bible teaches. That's not a Christian or biblical approach to life. But it is true that my life will end, your life will end, everyone's life will end, and so we will leave Earth at that time. And we need to be ready to stand before God and give an account for how we live. Now, one of the most amazing things is that you go back through history and you'll find that the great spiritual leaders have, well, let me put it another way. Once in the Roman Catholic era, which would go right up to the Reformation, the spiritual leaders were all single because priests were required to be celibate and so forth. But the great spiritual leaders, beginning with the Reformation, were all amazing family men. Actually, one of the most blessed things about Martin Luther was not that he was a great theologian, although he was, and not that he was a great preacher, although he was a great preacher, an amazing evangelist. There's no way to exaggerate the impact that his evangelistic preaching had on all of Northern Europe. That's all great. But many people say that his lasting effect or lasting influence was the fact that he and Catherine von Bora had an amazing marriage relationship. They had a number of children, and the tenderness that he as well as she displayed toward their children, their love for their children, their family, and the fact that Martin Luther was running a seminary that whole period of time, and many of his students whom he taught theology through the day sat at his table at night and observed the relationship between husband and wife and between parents and children. And the warmth of that family life surpassed anything they had seen anywhere. It certainly surpassed the warmth of the family life, or the lack of warmth of family life, that Luther grew up under. And that influenced not just one generation, but it influenced an entire all of Northern Europe for many, many generations, for hundreds of years afterwards. So there's one example. And then, of course, we're well aware of John and Charles Wesley. And there we find that they had this amazing mother who taught them the scriptures, who taught them, who lived out a relationship with God before them. And I could go on and on listing many other examples of this sort. But the fact of the matter is that Christian homes have raised the giants that have changed the Western world over the last 500, 600 years.
So let me ask you something. If you're a family, let's say the head of the family, and you're picking up the Bible for the very first time, you want to encourage your family members to read God's holy scriptures, where should you start? Maybe with the book of John, some people say? What do you suggest?
Interestingly enough, there's a really strange thing that's happened, I think, in my lifetime, and that is that we have become truly a post-Christian world here in North America. Someone has well said, I did not originate this idea, but things are more like the first century today than they have been at any time in between, in terms of the moral and spiritual world that we live in, where even the so-called church members and so forth are oftentimes not nearly as godly as we could wish they would be. But that being the case, what a lot of missionaries are discovering is that when you go into, for example, the Islamic world and other places where there is no familiarity with scripture, there's no familiarity with Christian terminology, the best place to start is the Gospel of Luke. That Luke is written by a Gentile, and there's just a subtle understanding. He explains things. I was just coming across that in Matthew. In my daily Bible reading yesterday morning, I was reading a passage in Matthew, and I thought, you know what? Luke explains this better, doesn't he? And I went over and found it. And yes, he does. It doesn't matter where. Luke just explains some amazing things there. So start with the Gospel of Luke. Plus, it's written very clearly and very, well, just easy to understand, and then can lead straight into the book of Acts, because Luke wrote both the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts. And so you can go from one to the other, and you get a really good picture of early Christian history. The beginning, of course, the very beginning, with the angel appearing to John the Baptist's father, and then Zechariah, and then appearing to Mary and Joseph and the baby born. And so at the Christmas season, man, start with Luke chapter 1, start reading the Christmas story to your family, and go right through the rest of the book as the year unfolds before you.
Jeffrey, we only have a couple of minutes left here, but I wanted to ask you about where people can go in the Bible if they've lost a loved one recently to really find comfort, and that the Holy Spirit can really comfort them through their grief.
How about John chapter 11? That takes you to the story of Jesus and the resurrection or the raising of Lazarus from the dead. We should not say resurrection, because Lazarus did not rise with eternal life. He still went ahead and died again at some point. But he was raised, he was resuscitated and raised from the dead, even after 4 days of being buried in a tomb. And but just the words that Jesus gives to Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, what amazing comfort. He that believeth in me shall never die, and I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me shall never die. And because what we see then is, in Christ, death becomes nothing more than a doorway into life everlasting. And just to read and meditate on that chapter will bless your heart to no end.
How about people who need rest in Jesus, especially in such a stressful world that we live in today, to find rest in God's holy scriptures? Where would you recommend?
Well, the very end of Matthew 11 speaks of the triumph of Christ over Satan, and then Jesus says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And I can assure you, actually, funny enough, I woke up at about 4 a.m. this morning with some issues on my mind. not the scheduling of this conference, but there's some issues on my mind, things that are coming up that really have that are very. I was upset about them. I was concerned about them, and suddenly I was wide awake, and I'm thinking, I need more sleep than this. And I was able to just say, Lord, this is in your hands. And I know that you are the sovereign God who changes men's hearts and who arranges the circumstances of the life around us. And within 30 minutes, I was back asleep again. And when the alarm went off later, I was surprised, oh, it's morning already. And so all I'm trying to say is that we have got to learn to rest in the Lord. We've got to learn to give him control of our personal lives and to recognize that he is in control of the entire world around us. One of the things that people push against is talk about the sovereignty of God, because it goes against our natural spirit that we want to be sovereign over our own lives. I don't want to be sovereign over my life. I want the God who knows the future in detail, in excruciating detail. I want that God to be in charge of my life. Then I can give my life to him and trust him to see me through the worst moments.
Schaefer Parker is with Faith Beyond Belief. Schaefer, thanks so much for joining us today from Calgary.
Thank you, Hal. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be with you.
These are challenging times for so many Canadians, including Albertans. Families are struggling to put food on their tables, pay their bills, and business owners are trying desperately to stay afloat. Political changes were made. Now we have a new premier here in Alberta with Danielle Smith, and she has a new cabinet as well. Now, a man who used to be part of the UCP is Drew Barnes. He's now an independent MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, and he joins us now from the Hat. Drew, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Good morning, Hal. Thanks for taking time to talk to me.
Now, Drew, you used to be part of the United Conservative Party. Premier Smith recently won a seat, as you know, in Brooks Medicine Hat in your area. Any chance that maybe you and Smith can get together for a cup of coffee and talk about you returning to the party?
Well, thanks for that. First of all, I'm very grateful to the people of Cypress Medicine Hat for electing me 3 times. And of course, I was ejected from the UCP caucus about 18 months ago for speaking out against COVID lockdowns, some financial ways that weren't focused on families. And, I'm in an interesting spot where still a big percentage of my constituents want me to stay as an independent. But in answer to your specific question, I've talked to Premier Smith several times. I've let her know where I stand. I've offered my services. I absolutely believe, Hal, that, as you said, that we have an affordability crisis, an economic crisis in Alberta. The government of Alberta needs to do something to bring spending and taxes down so families have more opportunity. I've advocated strongly for ending the 2% small business tax so small businesses have more hope and opportunity. And I'm waiting to see if the Smith government shares those values.
Yeah, the provincial election is coming up next May. Have you decided if you will in fact run again? It sounds like you are.
Well, I'm very, very grateful for the chance to represent Cypress Medicine Hatters. I believe I still have the energy, the enthusiasm, and the support to do it. So the decision from here is: do I try to rejoin the UCP? Do I stay as an independent? My constituents, God bless them, haven't been a whole bunch of help. They're almost evenly split, where a third of them want me to stay as an independent, a third of them want me to get back to the UCP. And Hal, just as an aside, 20% are unsure and 20% want me to go away regardless. So we're going to have to figure that out.
Drew, I know you're a popular guy in Cypress Medicine Hat, but come on, running as an independent is a challenge. You don't have the backing of a party. So that has to be consideration as well.
That has to be the consideration. You're so right. But people every day text me or call me and say, hey, we so like how you've had the ability to stay focused on the economy, on government's overreach during the COVID mandates. I've been able to not be harnessed by the party and speak out on their behalf. Hal, even since Premier Smith was elected, which, as Premier, which is a month or 6 weeks ago now, I've been a loud advocate for increasing the tax exemption for all Albertans, increasing the family tax exemption for families in Alberta, ending the 2% small business tax, going back to our 10% flat tax, and doing something about the high cost of utilities. My idea is to take the Tier 1 carbon tax that big industry pays and use that to subsidize residential families' transmission costs. If I was in caucus, Hal, I couldn't be doing that. And until I see the Smith government focused on reducing spending, reducing taxes, I would suggest I'm better on the outside.
And a lot of people would argue as well, put a cap on car insurance rates, which are going through the roof as well. Now, Drew, you're talking to a lot of Hatters right now, people in Medicine Hat. Are they pleased with the new leadership of the UCP?
They are. I mean, her mandate, her majority win in the recent by-election was a little more narrow than some had hoped for. I think she won with 53%. But there's many factors in that. A by-election had low voter turnout. Some of the parties, in opposition to her were perhaps a bit more organized. So people are pleased. People down here, Southern Alberta, Hal, we get forgotten a lot. And anytime we can have the Premier understand Southern Alberta, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge better, that's only good for us, even if it's just a 6-month window. And I will say this, I'm grateful that Premier Smith has committed to run again in Brooks Medicine Hat in the general at the end of May. So she's learned a lot about Southern Alberta, and that's only good.
As we talked about earlier, Drew, there are a lot of business closures and a lot of people dealing with mental health issues and addictions during the pandemic as we're slowly making our way out here. How do you feel the people in Medicine Hat are doing now?
Thanks for that. Medicine Hat, like so many communities, we were hit hard with self-harm and a mental health crisis, and our economy is not great. Still today, Hal, our economy is weaker. House sales are very slow now. The city is quiet. We don't have as much oil and gas development activity as we used to. It just came out in the living wage mechanism that somebody did, that Medicine Hat's living wage was $17.32, the lowest in Alberta by quite a margin, reflective of perhaps our weaker economy. So we're still hurting, but again, to me, that's why government's got to spend less so they can tax less. Let's give our families hope. Let's give our entrepreneurs and our hard workers hope. Let's give our small businesses a chance to compete, to give us service, and to get back on their feet. We've got this situation now where we seem to just wait for one government handout after another, and picking winner and losers, the unfairness that creates, I don't believe is good for our culture long term. And I hope the UCP can pivot and start to spend and tax less.
There's been talk of the Alberta government eliminating the provincial fuel tax once again. Do you think that'll make much of a difference here when it comes to the affordability crisis here in the province?
It will certainly help. And I think it needs to be done, as well as reducing business and family income taxes. Hal, our blessing is our curse. Our oil and gas royalties are about to go up by at least $8 billion a year, as I think it's 5 to 8 oil sand plants have met their cost of capital recovery, so they're going to pay higher royalties. Let's use that money to reduce Albertans' taxes so Albertans can work hard and provide choice and services, and we can create the kind of culture that we've always had, where we work hard, we take risk, and we help each other.
Drew, how do you feel about some of the smaller independence parties positioning themselves as maybe an alternative to the UCP in the next election? Do you feel that'll maybe split the right vote?
Well, first of all, choice is good for all Albertans, and Hal, if you don't vote for what you want, you'll never get it. So the vote splitting argument, to me, just doesn't hold a lot of water, and it just reinforces the two legacy parties that are there now. So I'm grateful that hardworking Albertans, most of them on their own time and their own dime, are getting together, developing ideas, sharing ideas, and with the idea of more prosperous Alberta families, Alberta being the freest and most prosperous place. I'm glad they're presenting ideas, and let's see where it goes. How our system could use way more involvement. Our system could use more ideas for sure.
Drew, in your opinion, what will it take to ensure that the UCP holds on to power and fends off a charging Rachel Notley and the NDP?
Thank you. What it's going to take first and foremost is finding conservative values again. family values so families can prosper and take care of their choice in education and healthcare. What is going to take a smaller government and lower taxes? There's some things that seem like they're out there, but they're the foundation of creating wealth and strong families. Things like property rights, strengthening the rule of law, how we're living in this world now of catch and release with our criminal system. That has so got to change. And I think if the UCP government and Premier Smith were to focus on a government that spends less, lower taxes, and rural crime, I think they'd go a long way to get reelected.
Obviously the big cities are big battlegrounds too, Calgary and Edmonton. The UCP and NDP are both putting a lot of their efforts in there. What will it take for the UCP to hold on to some of those seats and secure some new ones in the bigger cities?
Well, thanks. It will take some fresh ideas. We haven't had low taxes and strong conservative values for decades now. So it's going to take a strong move from the UCP government to significantly reduce taxes. Really, when I was thinking, earlier about the Kenney government legacy, they reduced big corporation taxes down. I think we've seen some benefits of that, but not what we could. Why instead can't we do the same for families? Hal, when we had a 10% flat tax in Alberta, that went a long way to diversify our economy because we attracted risk takers, hard workers, and people that gave back to their communities and their neighbors. And I think a strong move in that direction is how you get reelected. The UCP government and Premier Smith needs to show Albertans that they are conservative and they are significantly different from Rachel Notley and the NDP.
Drew, looking back to the results of the Fair Deal panel, why do you feel that a provincial police force is still a good idea?
It's just a good idea, first of all, because right now our justice system is broken. We also need some changes in Crown prosecutor and judicial manners there. But it's all about gaining some leverage with Alberta in addition to better policing, more accountable policing. Hal, the fact that not only do Albertans send over $25 billion a year to Ottawa, but we have inequity in the Supreme Court. Quebec is guaranteed 3 seats. Ontario is guaranteed 3 seats. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba just rotate one on a basis of whose turn it is. And the fact that so many laws are geared for home ownership in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver instead of agriculture and resource development in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Those are the kind of changes we need Ottawa to pay attention to. And doing things like our own police force, our own tax collection, our own control over our immigration needs would go a long way to show Ottawa that we can take care of ourselves, just like Quebec does.
Okay, let's talk about the pension plan for just a moment. Rachel Notley and the NDP have slammed the UCP for pushing for the Alberta pension plan over the Canada pension plan. What are your thoughts on the Alberta government potentially taking over our retirement or pension funds?
Oh, absolutely, we need to. And for the simple reason, it would be at least a $3 billion benefit for Alberta workers and families. The number could be as high as $5 billion, but between $3 and $5 billion more annually leaves Alberta in terms of higher premiums, or it doesn't come back in terms of lower benefits for our seniors. So number one, it would go a huge distance to make life more economically prosperous here. But Hal, that's an interesting one, and nothing should be done without making sure Albertans are fully transparent and fully engaged. When I was on the Fair Deal panel, many Albertans came to me and said they'd like the idea, but they were concerned about the risk and they were concerned about how it would work. So I would challenge and encourage Premier Smith to go slower on the pension, to have a referendum for all Albertans a year or two from now, and how it's based on kind of 3 things. Number one, Albertans need to know what we're doing with their money. Number two, it's based on making sure that they have the full and final say on what happens with their money. But third, it's about getting a better deal with Ottawa. And please remember that most of us want to stay a strong part of Canada, but nothing moves unless it's pushed, and it's time to push Ottawa for fairness for Alberta families.
Let's chat a bit about property rights and the importance for Albertans. Is it more just an agricultural sector issue? What are your thoughts?
No, it's essential for Albertans. It is a bit of a concept that's out there for sure, but Hal, there's 2 components that create wealth: property rights your right to own something, to use it as you want, to buy it, sell it, lease it, or not, and the rule of law. And you look at where Alberta's at now. Property rights with bigger and bigger overreaching government, with more and more expropriations, with the Bill 36, the Alberta Land Stewardship Act that the Progressive Conservatives tried to do 10 or 12 years ago, that really, really hurt and diminished property rights, coupled with the rule of law right now in Alberta. I mean, when I talk to business people who are 10 years plus in their civil court cases and can't get court time, when you hear about the catch and release system for our offenders, where the consequences for serious offenses are avoided a lot of times, these are the things of how we create wealth. And Alberta, we have hardworking, risk-taking people. We need property rights and effective rule of law so we can create wealth for everyone.
Now, speaking of rights, Drew, can you explain why it's so important for you that Albertans maintain their rights over government authority?
Absolutely, it's essential. Government has a tendency to overreach. We saw it with the and be not clear as to what they're doing. We saw it with the COVID mandates. We didn't have a curfew, but we had restrictive exemption rules, which was really the same thing. And because we've had big government for a long time, I think a lot of smart, hardworking Albertans feel things are out of their control. So too often they turn to the government to make a decision, and government picks winners and losers, creates some unfairness. That just breeds unhappiness and uncertainty for all of us. So I believe, Hal, that we need a written constitution that, if we're ever in a COVID situation again, that a high percentage of MLAs in a free vote get to say yes or no, and that way constituents will have the final word.
Drew, are you hopeful with Lethbridge East MLA and the new infrastructure minister, Nathan Neudorf, that Highway 3 can be twinned all the way down to Medicine Hat?
I'm very, very hopeful. We needed help. Lethbridge is doing well, and there's so many reasons that we should join the Medicine Hat and the Cypress County economy stronger with Lethbridge, and safety is a big thing, of course. I remember when I was first elected in 2012 that some parts of Highway 3 had a higher traffic count than Highway 63 to Fort McMurray. So with safety and a stronger economy in mind, and again, we're very, very fortunate. Oil and gas royalties look like they're going to be strong for the next several years. Let's do what we need to do to make Alberta the freest and most prosperous place.
Drew Barnes is the independent MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat. Thanks for joining us today from Medicine Hat.
Hal, I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
You as well. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.